Hi guys, Elliot here, finally with another YouTube video. I gotta apologize because I know it's taken a while for me to get these going, but I've had a few family issues to deal with sort of internally, and I was also away in Las Vegas, as some of you will know. So I was there for a month from March 15th to April 15th, I think it was. So I'm really going to use this video to discuss my results, which I know people will take a keen interest in for whatever reason. Going to use it to discuss some of the experiences that I had, so on and off the poker table, to talk about some of the new friends that I made. Met a really great, solid bunch of guys out there, which to be honest, probably consider friends for life now. And also, I think most importantly, ego, and how I believe my own ego, which I didn't think I had, or at least thought I had more control over, I believe ended up costing me thousands of pounds, or dollars even, on the poker table. So we're going to start with the results. Let's get into it, and we're going to take it from there. Cheers. Okay, guys, the moment you've all been waiting for. Yeah, my results from the Vegas trip. So at the bottom here, you can see my total profit, which is just over $4,000. If you'd asked me before the trip whether I'd consider this number a success or not, I definitely would have said no. I was, again, pre-Vegas expecting to make more than this. But as, I sort of arrived in Vegas and started chatting to my friends, who've been doing this for a long time, I think really the first trip is around the experience of it and really just adjusting to that sort of poker lifestyle and just really getting used to Vegas. Because there are lots of things to consider outside of playing poker, like the food situation, the water situation, things like making sure that you keep up with the gym. And I think generally just trying to keep as physically and mentally healthy as possible. And all of the action, really does take place outside of the casinos. But we're going to touch on that more as we progress through the video. So I think, the first thing here I'm going to focus on is just the location, which I think is key here and is one of my main takeaways from Vegas. So these rows are separated session by session, so most of them are on different days. But you'll see that most of my volume took place at the Bellagio. Now, Bellagio was a very easy option because it was the first casino that I played at, the first one that I went to. That's where all of my friends were playing. It just makes it very easy to stay there, because you can go on breaks with your friends, go grab a coffee, go check out the girls on the strip, whatever it is you want to do, go and check out the fountains. But in terms of the most profitable thing to do, this definitely isn't the way forward. Because often, especially in the 5-10 games, you'd find yourself really just sitting at a table with 6, 7 other regs, where, even if you do have an edge, even if you don't, you'd just be better off, moving to a table or changing to a casino to where the action is just softer. And in Vegas, with all of the options, you have all of the different casinos, all of the different games. There's really just no need to sit at a bad game. In some cases, you'd probably be better off just not playing, especially with the rake. Now, the question I asked myself is, why was this the case? Because I was being told this by, some of the guys who had been there before and said, you need to really table select well. But it was just my ego keeping me in some of these games because I wanted to, I think, just prove to myself or maybe others, I'm not too sure, that I could beat these games, even if, there are loads of regs on that table. And in terms of being profitable and making money, it just makes absolutely no sense. But I really struggled to move table because I felt like in some way I would be a failure if I did that. Whereas now, so post this trip, I realized that table selection is just absolutely key. Especially, when we spend all that money and everything and time going across to Vegas, we want to play in good games, which is why we go there, right? You'll see that most of the action was there. So I think I definitely would have had a more profitable trip if I was a bit more, careful in my game selection and not just sitting in terrible games, basically. On the right hand side here, you can see the main stakes that I was playing. So it was a mix of 2-5 and 5-10. Now, often these games would play a bit bigger, like the 2-5 would be a 2-5-10 and the 5-10 would be like a 5-10-20. I think I even had one game early on in the trip where the game like was playing like 2-5-10-20-40-80, which is ridiculous for these stakes. But yeah, there were some guys from Texas, you know, drinking and having a good time. So that was a lot of fun. Before the trip, I didn't want to play any 5-10 as I didn't really have the role to play it. But again, I saw all of my friends playing 5-10 and I was like, oh, I want to jump in there, you know. Again, sort of prove that, you know, you can roll with these guys. There's more money flying around. But if I filter here just for 5-10, you'll see that I actually had some of my biggest losses at 5-10, you know. And at this point in where I am in my career, it's just so unnecessary. And here, like some of the later sessions, you know, I mean, what did we make? We were minus 665 for you know, the 5-10 is not too bad. But towards the end, you know, minus almost $2,000, minus $1,500. That variance is just completely unnecessary. And I think, to be honest, if I just played 2-5 the entire trip, I probably would have made like $10,000-$15,000 at a minimum. But again, it was just purely my ego driving me like towards playing these high stakes, which is just not necessary at all. My results early in the trip, so like the first 2 weeks, were really good. Obviously, you know, you're full of energy, full of adrenaline, full of beans. You know, you're just buzzing to be in Vegas. And then towards the end here, you can see it's like final sort of week and a half, 2 weeks. We were down, you know, almost $6,000. Was I playing worse poker? Probably yes. And that's because I felt myself getting very tired. Made some really, really bad mistakes, especially in some of these 5-10 games. But I just made poor decisions, which I definitely wouldn't have made earlier on in the trip. So there was definitely that fatigue factor. There was definitely this sort of feeling of, you know, I need to make the most of my time in Vegas. So you start to force the pots or you know, trying to win pots that just aren't yours to win. So towards the end of the trip here, just very tired. And just generally some just very, very poor decision making right across the board. But, you know, we will learn for next time. And that is what this trip is all about. But yeah, you know, overall, I mean, up 4,000, so we're in profit. That covers expenses, plus some more, which I am happy with. You know, again, I'm not really too bothered about how much I made or lost on this trip, but I know that people find it interesting. So I thought I'd just show that for a bit of transparency. And yeah, I think now we're just going to talk about some of the other experiences that I had, and I'm going to touch more on this sort of idea of ego, which I know does get spoken about a lot. But my ego really was something that I thought I had under control or didn't have a problem with. But yeah, it turns out that I actually do. Let's focus on that and get into it. Yeah, so when I arrived in Vegas, I must admit I was absolutely buzzing to be there. I mean, I love America a lot anyway, but it was my first time in Vegas. And I just really didn't know what to expect. You know, obviously you hear a lot of the stories, what happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas, the Hangover movies, etc., etc. But yeah, I was really happy to be flying out there. Now, for those of you who don't know, I did a poker academy about 2 years ago, which really played an integral part in me, getting to where I am now, essentially. Now, in this academy, I met a guy called Steve Morris, aka Mozza, who was one of the coaches within the academy. And I let him know I was flying out there, and he was actually going to be there at the same time. I really just want to take this moment to say like a massive shout out to him. You know, he welcomed me to Vegas with open arms, sort of showed me the ropes, introduced me to lots of new people as well, which I really appreciate. And I think, he definitely made that trip just amazing for me. If I was out there purely on my own, I'm not sure what I would have got up to or whether I would have had the same experience. But the amount of learning and some of the great conversations that we had out there, Yeah, very thankful for that. Yeah, and the same goes for some of the guys Steve introduced me to. So that's, Dan, Dan and Harry, who are brothers, and Craig as well. Absolute pleasure to meet you guys, if you're watching. And yeah, I'm sure we'll all see each other soon. But yeah, so flying out there, I think that the first thing that really struck me was just sort of like how busy everything is. Like the city or state or whatever it is, like really does run around just the casinos. Everything happens in their casinos. Obviously, all of the gambling, a lot of the shows, the clubs, that side of things all happens via the casinos, which I just thought was just super interesting. In terms of where I stayed, so we stayed in a condo, so literally about a 10-minute walk away from the strip. And during the first 2 weeks, I got into a pretty good routine. So I was working out in the morning, pretty much every day. And then because it's so hot, obviously you can tan out there as well. And there was a nice pool and a hot tub. So yeah, got into like really good, healthy habits. And then I think after the first 2 weeks, as I started to get like a bit more tired, a lot of those good habits dropped off. Started to eat a lot worse, was definitely getting a lot less sleep. Yeah, stopped working out, stopped tanning. And this was all happening at the same time that my results were getting worse. And I just really put that down to, I mean, sort of like part of it, I feel like it is just a laziness. But I just didn't realize how important those things are, just to basically keep focused for long periods of time. Now, what was great, often after our sessions, we'd all go down to like the hot tub where we were staying and just chat and talk, talk about the session, just talk about life. And, during those conversations is where you really get to find out what people are about. And, people's reasons for wanting to play poker. Some of the guys were a bit younger, so all they've done is play poker. And some of the guys are a bit old, like 28, 29, 30, like me, who've worked previously in a more sort of traditional job and have decided to leave all of that behind just to pursue a career playing poker. And I think that the recurring theme with a lot of poker players is it's not always the money, which I think is what people often think of first, but it's more about just like the freedom to travel. Just really freedom to do what you want. You don't have a boss, and all of these things which I talk about in these videos. So you'll see a lot of the guys, like the group that I was out there with, was they'd maybe go to Vegas for like 3, 4, 5 months of the year, and then spend the rest of the time in Thailand. And the way I look at that is, although I don't have any plans to move out to Thailand, I'll probably be staying in the UK. But that's just a much healthier life, and would probably describe that as like an alternative way of living. But I don't understand why that's the case. I don't understand why these healthier lifestyles are considered alternative. That shouldn't be the case. Now, with poker, obviously, it's a different income stream to a traditional job, where you're getting paid on a monthly basis. You know what you're going to be paid, etc., etc. In poker, you have, a lot more swings, especially as you play the higher stakes. Some of the guys I was out there with, would be winning and losing 10, 20, 30, 40K a day. So learning to deal with that obviously has sort of big implications on your relationship with money. But that's sort of not necessarily the downside, but that's what has to happen as a poker player. But also it's sort of the trade-off, for having all of your time, for not having a boss, for being able to do what you want. Now, there are some days where I'd be, especially towards the end, where I just really didn't want to play much poker. And, if I'm not playing poker, then I'm not making money. So again, in your head, like trying to work through that and, just focusing on all of the good habits. I think that really is the key to success, because when you do have your own time, and I think, you know, when you're like a young man, it's very, very easy just to slip off, especially in a place like Vegas, as I'm sure you can imagine. But just to give you a flavour of what some of these guys, you know, who are much better than me and some of the high stakes players, what they're doing, you know, you're seeing a lot of meditation, a lot of physical fitness, a lot of reading, a lot of self-reflection. And, you know, while some people might think that poker playing is like degenerate, actually it's the complete opposite. You know, people are very mindful of, you know, what's going on in their own minds and bodies. And that's something that you don't see in these like traditional jobs, you know, which is the opposite of mindfulness, where you're just doing the same thing over and over again on purely autopilot mode. So yeah, there's all of that to think about. But yeah, you know, outside of that, we had a few nights out, you know, which were great, like really fun time. I think we went to this sort of cowgirl bar a few times, which was really good fun. But yeah, like I said, you know, shout out to Morris and like the guys that I'm out there. Wouldn't have been as good a trip, you know, without you guys. No way. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see each other all soon. This is going to be the final section of the video where I really want to talk about just my key takeaways from Vegas and a few points that I'm going to touch on as to how I want to improve moving forward. And these are going to be actually outside of poker and more personal development issues. So as we touched on in the results section, I realized during my trip that I had issues with my ego, which I didn't think that I actually had. I never really thought I was one to have a big ego, but I think as time went on in Vegas, I realized that I actually did. And now the perfect example of this is this game selection. So in poker, if you're sitting on a table that's full of 7 other players that are better than you, for example, that situation is not going to be profitable for you. Now, if I'm in that scenario, my initial instinct is to sit at that table and play and show these guys that I can beat them, and if not beat them, at least hang and play with them. Whereas as a professional, the decision we should make there should be to leave and go and find a softer game. And in Vegas, there are no shortage of soft games. So that's where the ego sort of like inhibits your decision making as to what's best, instead of trying to show these guys that you don't even know, who live in a different country to you, that you can beat them. So moving forward, I just really want to make sure that I make the most profitable decisions on a rational basis, which don't involve my ego, because there are certainly times in Vegas when my ego was literally purely in control. And the same goes for wanting to play the highest stakes. Like, this is my first trip, or was my first trip in Vegas, and it was very much a learning experience. When I spoke to some of the other guys who've had 5, 6, 7 plus trips in Vegas, they tell me stories of their first trips in Vegas and some of the mistakes they made. Whereas I think when I went out there, I didn't necessarily put too much pressure on myself, but I really wanted it for it like to be a very profitable trip. And for me, it's almost like for self-gratification that, look, I'm going to go to Vegas and I'm going to play and I'm going to make money because I'm a good player. I was sort of looking for that validation. Whereas in reality, I should have just gone there and you just sort of like take it day by day, make sure that you find the good games and just make sure that you play solid poker, and everything else literally just shouldn't matter. So moving forward, that's going to be, the real takeaway. And I'm going to think about how this sort of affects other areas of my life as well. Like whether it comes to money, whether it comes to, just small things like the clothes I'm wearing, for example, or, how I talk with my friends. I think this ego, like we do as much as we can to protect our ego, when actually protecting our ego is like the worst thing that we can do. If we just do, what we think's right, like rationally, without our ego involved, often the decision that we make is going to be like a million times better than when we're making an egotistical, very like emotional decision. So yeah, that's something that I'm really going to be focusing on, and I'm really looking forward to getting out there again, hopefully this year. and putting some of what I've learned into use. Now, the other thing I'm going to touch on, obviously I was away from my family for a month, away from my girlfriend for a month, and something that poker players experience is their families or girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever not quite understanding what they're doing. Like me going to Vegas for me wasn't just me going out there for a month to like be a degenerate and gamble. It's more than just playing poker. Like for me, it was very much like a journey, some self-discovery in there, meeting new people, and really just living life. And these are the reasons why I left my job in the first place. If I didn't leave, that there is no way that I would ever have had the chance to meet these people and to go and do what I've done and all of these things. So even though for me it wasn't the most successful trip in terms of profit, it completely like validifies my decision to leave my job. And like I've never been more excited just like about my future, like inside and outside of poker than now. And yeah, and just on that family piece and girlfriend piece, like what I've realized that I'm very grateful and I'm very lucky to have like a family who understand what I'm doing. I think especially as a parent and as a girlfriend, it's very easy to get worried when, you know, your son or boyfriend is going away and like, you know, playing poker and gambling with his money. But I'm grateful to be in a case where like I'm fully supported, especially by my girlfriend, where it can't be easy for her to see me go through some of these swings when I'm talking to her about some of the poker plays and stuff like that. Like we don't do that a lot. Actually, we try and keep it pretty separate. But yeah, it's really just a moment of me being grateful, you know, towards these people in my life, in supporting me when I really don't think that they have to. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Going to try and get some podcasts going. I'm going to try and get Steve Morris on the YouTube channel, as he's got like a really great story and has been through some massive ups and downs like during his poker career. Hopefully that'll be all right with him. And yeah, we're going to start focusing on content a lot more now that I'm back and settled, family issues have been dealt with. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your feedback in the comments. Any other questions you have, just let me know and I'll be happy to answer them. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.